This 4-year-old homeless girl sees a millionaire passed out in a sinking car in the river, but she saw everything and does something that shocks everyone. Comment with your thoughts on this story and give it a rating from 0 to 10. I really want to know if you enjoyed my story. And please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The desperate scream cut through the hot August air like a blade, echoing along the banks of the Willow Creek River. Lily woke with a start under the bridge where she had spent the night, her 4 years of life already hardened by the streets of Ashton Falls. The sound was coming from the water, where a man in a grey suit was struggling against the currents, his arms flailing desperately as he tried to stay afloat. Without hesitating, the little girl ran toward the river, her bare feet slipping in the mud on the bank. The man was sinking fast, his pale face disappearing beneath the murky water. Lily knew how to swim. She had learned out of necessity when the rains filled the storm drains, where she sometimes hid. She dove in, without a second thought. The cold water enveloped her, but she managed to reach the stranger who smelled of medicine and despair. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she pulled him toward the nearest bank, where some rocks made it easier to get out. The man coughed violently, expelling water as he tried to catch his breath. "Mister, are you okay?" Lily asked, watching the man's haggard face as he now stared at her in astonishment. Arthur Winston couldn't believe what had just happened. Moments before, he was driving over the bridge when an anxiety attack hit him, like a hammer. The image of Vince, his brother-in-law and business partner, confessing that he had been embezzling money from the family company for 2 years, hammered in his mind. He lost control of the car, which skidded and plunged into the river. You saved me," he murmured, still breathless, looking at the thin, matted-haired child who was staring at him with large, curious eyes. Lily nodded, wringing the water from her torn t-shirt. "My sister always says we have to help when someone's drowning. You were drowning real bad." "Your sister?" Arthur slowly stood up, his legs feeling wobbly. "Where is she?" "Sarah went to sell candy at the bus station. She'll be back tonight." The girl examined the man with interest. "You're rich, right? Your clothes are nice, even when they're wet." Arthur looked down at himself, the ruined Italian suit, the leather shoes destroyed by the water. 2 weeks ago, these things mattered. Now, after discovering that his agricultural equipment company was on the brink of bankruptcy due to Vince's betrayal, nothing made sense anymore. "What were you doing here all alone?" he asked, noticing how small and vulnerable the child was. "I sleep here sometimes. It's safer than other places." Lily pointed to a makeshift shelter of cardboard and plastic under the bridge. "Sarah doesn't like it, but when it rains hard, it's the only place that doesn't flood." Arthur's heart clenched. Ever since he lost Eleanor 3 months ago, during that cursed surgery that should have been simple, he had closed himself off in his grief. Now, looking at this little girl who had risked her life to save him, something stirred within him. "What's your name?" "Lily. And you?" "Arthur." He hesitated. "Lily, are you hungry?" The girl's eyes lit up, but she answered, with a caution learned on the streets, "I'm always hungry, but Sarah said not to take food from strangers." "Your sister is wise." Arthur observed the precarious shelter where the girl lived. "But what if I met her first? Could I wait until she gets back?" Lily tilted her head, studying the man's face. There was something in him that didn't seem dangerous, a deep sadness she recognized because she carried her own. "You can stay, but you can't go in our house without Sarah's permission." Arthur nodded, sitting on a nearby rock. His mind was still spinning from the events of the last few days. Discovering Vince's betrayal had been devastating, but now, sitting here with a child who had saved his life without asking for anything in return, He wondered if there wasn't something bigger at play. "Lily, do you know a lot of people here in town?" "I do. We hang out at the town square during the day, and I listen to the grown-ups talk. Sarah says it's important to pay attention to what people say." "And what do you hear?" The girl frowned, as if organizing complex memories. "A lot of things. There are some men who talk about papers and money, about land too. They talk quietly, but I have good hearing." Arthur sat up straighter. "What men?" "Some in suits like you, but they're different. They say things that make people sad." Lily paused, looking uncomfortable. "There's one who looks like you, but younger. He talks about machines and farms." Arthur's blood ran cold. Vince. The girl had seen Vince. This man, do you remember his name? "Vince," Lily answered without hesitation. "He yells sometimes, talks about a partner who doesn't know anything." Arthur's hands trembled. The child had witnessed conversations that could be crucial to understanding the extent of his brother-in-law's betrayal, but at the same time a voice in his head warned him about what he was thinking. Was it right to involve a child in his problems? The sun was setting when footsteps approached. Sarah appeared, a thin 16-year-old with wary eyes and a nearly empty bag of candy. "Lily, who is this man?" Her voice carried a fierce protectiveness. "He drowned, Sarah. I saved him," Lily explained, running to her sister. Sarah studied Arthur with a suspicion that went beyond her years. "Do you want something?" "Your sister saved my life," Arthur said, getting up slowly. "I wanted to thank her." "You thanked her. Now you can leave." "Sarah." Arthur took a deep breath. "Do you two live here alone?" "That's none of your business." "Do you have a place to sleep tonight? It's going to get cold." Sarah hesitated. The money from the candy had been little, and she knew the night would be difficult. But years on the streets had taught her that favors always came with a price. "Why do you want to know?" Arthur looked at the two girls, one who had saved his life, the other, who fought to protect her. In his mind, the fragments of an idea began to form. Lily had heard things about Vince. Maybe, just maybe, she could help him understand what was really happening with his company. "Because," he said carefully, "maybe we can help each other." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "How so?" "I have a big, empty house. You have information I might need." He paused, realizing how that sounded. "It's nothing dangerous. Just talking." "What kind of information?" "About the man your sister mentioned, Vince. He stole from me, and I need to know more about what." "You saw and heard." Sarah looked at Lily, who was shivering slightly in the cool wind that was starting to blow. The decision she would make in that moment would change everything. "Just for one night," she said finally. "And if I don't like anything, we're leaving." Arthur nodded, but inside he knew nothing would be that simple. There was something in Lily's words, in the way she described Vince's conversations, that suggested his problems were much bigger than he imagined. Arthur's house stood like a monument to lost success on Maple Avenue, one of the most affluent streets in Ashton Falls. When the girls got out of his car, a BMW that Lily examined with childish fascination, Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. Houses like this meant people with power, and people with power always wanted something in return. "It's so big," Lily murmured, her wide eyes scanning the well-manicured garden and the imposing two-story facade. "Too big for one man alone," Arthur replied, his voice carrying a melancholy that didn't escape Sarah. When they entered, they were greeted by a woman of about 70, with grey hair in a bun and a floral apron. Her eyes widened when she saw the children. "My goodness, Arthur, where did these girls come from?" The surprise in her voice was genuine. Alma, this is Lily and Sarah. They'll be staying here tonight. Arthur hesitated. Lily saved me from drowning in the river today. Alma studied the girls with a maternal attentiveness. She had worked for the Winston family for 15 years, first as Eleanor's housekeeper, then as the caretaker of the house after her employer's passing. She knew Arthur well enough to sense there was more to this story. "You must be hungry," she said, addressing the girls. "I'll fix you something." "You don't have to bother," Sarah began, but Lily had already run to the kitchen, drawn by the smell of home-cooked food she hadn't smelled in months. "Let her," Alma smiled. "It's been a while since this house has had a child's laughter." While Lily explored the kitchen with the enthusiasm of a child who had discovered an amusement park, Sarah remained in the living room, observing every detail. Photographs of a happy couple decorated the shelves, a younger Arthur next to a beautiful woman with brown hair. "Your wife?" she asked, pointing to a photo. "She was," Arthur answered, sitting heavily in his leather armchair. "Eleanor passed away 3 months ago." "I'm sorry." Sarah knew the pain of loss, even at her young age. "She would have loved Lily," he murmured, watching the girl in the kitchen. "She always wanted children. But—" An uncomfortable silence filled the room until Alma called them for dinner. The dining room table, which could seat 12, seemed excessively formal for 4. Lily ate with a voracious appetite, but maintained the manners Sarah had taught her, while her older sister remained cautious. "Lily," Arthur began carefully, "do you remember anything else about that man, Vince? About the conversations you heard?" Sarah immediately tensed up. "Starting already?" "It's just a conversation," Arthur tried to reassure her. "I remember," Lily said, swallowing a piece of chicken. "He talked about papers that people signed. He said they couldn't read well, so he helped them." "What kind of papers?" "Land papers, farms. He told other men that the family sold cheap because they needed money." Lily paused, concentrating. "There's a word he uses a lot. Washing. But not for clothes." Arthur's fork stopped midway to his mouth. "Money laundering. Vince wasn't just embezzling funds from the company. He was using Winston equipment as a front for much more serious operations. Anything else?" "He talked about you once." Lily looked at Arthur seriously. "He said you were a fool, that you trusted too much, that by the time you found out it would be too late." Arthur's blood ran cold. "When was this?" "A few weeks ago. He was in the town square with some men from out of town. One of them asked if you knew, and Vince just laughed." Sarah watched the conversation with growing apprehension. There was something in the way Arthur reacted to Lily's words that made her uneasy. His hands were trembling slightly, and he kept wiping sweat from his forehead. "Mr. Winston," she interrupted, "are you okay?" "I'm fine," he lied. "It's just, this information is important to me." "Why?" Arthur looked at the two girls. Lily was eating peacefully, oblivious to the tension in the air, but Sarah was studying him with eyes that seemed too old for her age. "Because Vince is my brother-in-law. He was married to my wife's sister, and he stole a lot of money from my company. So you want to use my sister to catch him?" "It's not. That's simple." "Yes, it is." Sarah stood up. "Let's go, Lily." "Wait," Alma intervened for the first time. "Child, you have nowhere to go, and it's getting cold outside. We prefer the cold to being used." "No one is going to use anyone." Arthur stood up too. "Look, I understand your mistrust, but you two need help, and I need information. It could be something that benefits everyone." "How?" "Stay here for a few days. A home, food, clean clothes. In return, Lily tells me what she remembers from the conversations she overheard. No pressure, no forcing anything." Sarah hesitated. The offer was too tempting, and that scared her. "And after, when you get what you want?" Arthur didn't have a ready answer for that. He looked at Lily, who had finished eating and was now drawing invisible patterns on the table with her finger. "We'll see what happens then," he said finally. That night, the girls were settled in a room on the second floor, a room that had clearly been prepared for children who never arrived. Butterfly wallpaper, 2 small beds with colourful quilts, a bookshelf full of children's books. This was meant to be the room for the children they never had, Alma explained, making the beds with fresh sheets. After they were alone, Sarah sat on Lily's bed. "Lily, do you understand what's happening? The man wants to know about the conversations I heard. And you're going to tell him?" Lily thought for a moment. "He seems sad, like us, and the food here is good. That doesn't mean he's a good person. But he doesn't seem bad either. And Alma is nice." Sarah sighed. At 16, she had carried the weight of protecting her younger sister for 2 years, ever since they were orphaned. Every decision could be the difference between safety and danger. "We'll stay for a few days," she decided, "but if I don't like anything at all, we're out of here." While the girls settled in downstairs, Arthur was on the phone in his office. "Robert, it's me. Arthur. No, I can't wait until Monday. I need you to investigate some things about Vince." "What do you mean, what kind of things? Money laundering, document forgery, fraudulent land sales?" "No, I'm not crazy. I have a witness." Alma passed by the hallway and heard fragments of the conversation. She stopped, her heart tightening. For months she had suspected something was wrong with Vince, but she never imagined it was this serious, especially because there was a detail Arthur didn't know, a detail she carried like a weight on her chest. Vince was her son. She went up the stairs slowly, checking if the girls were settled. She found them asleep, Lily hugging a teddy bear she had found on the bed, Sarah still dressed, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. She returned to her room at the back of the house, where she opened a hidden drawer in her wardrobe. Inside was a folder with documents she had been collecting for months, papers Vince had dropped during his visits, phone calls she had overheard, notes about strange transactions. She knew what her son was doing, and she knew that sooner or later she would have to choose between protecting him and doing what was right. Looking out the window toward the girls' room, where a faint light still shone, Alma realized that moment had come sooner than she expected. The morning arrived with the aroma of fresh coffee and homemade bread, smells Lily hadn't experienced in a long time. She ran down the stairs, still in borrowed pajamas that were too big for her, and found Alma preparing breakfast in the kitchen. "Good morning, little one. Did you sleep well?" "Better than in a long time," Lily replied, climbing onto a chair. "The bed is as soft as a cloud." Sarah came down shortly after, already dressed in the same clothes from the previous day. She had slept little, waking up several times to check if Lily was still there. "Where's Mr. Winston?" she asked, observing the table set for 4. "He left early, said he had some business to take care of at the company." Alma avoided the teenager's gaze. She knew Arthur had gone looking for answers, and she feared what he might discover. As they ate breakfast, a car pulled up in front of the house. Through the window, they saw a tall, thin man getting out of a black sedan. He wore a brown suit and carried a leather briefcase. "Father Michael," Alma murmured, a mix of relief and apprehension in her voice. The priest entered without knocking, like someone who knew the house well. He was a man in his early 50s, with greying hair and kind eyes, but a worried expression. "Alma, I need to speak with Arthur urgently. Where is he?" He stopped when he saw the girls. "Who are they?" "Lily and Sarah. They're staying here for a few days." Father Michael studied the girls with pastoral attention. He immediately recognized the signs: worn clothes, caution in their eyes, the way Sarah protectively positioned herself in front of her sister. "You're the girls who live on the street, aren't you?" I've seen you a few times in the town square. Sometimes we sleep on the street, Sarah corrected with wounded pride. There's no shame in that, my child. We all need help at some point. He turned to Alma. Is Arthur not here? He left early for the company. Did something happen? The priest hesitated, looking at the girls. Can we speak in private? Alma led him into the living room, but their voices carried to the kitchen. Lily, with her sharp hearing, caught fragments of the conversation. Vince was at the church last night, seemed nervous, asking about Arthur, if he had sought you out. Said something about children who could cause trouble. Sarah saw Lily tense up. What is it? The priest is talking about the bad man. Vince, he knows about us. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. If Vince knew they were helping Arthur, it meant danger. At Winston Equipment, Arthur was rummaging through files with Robert Davis, his lawyer and longtime friend. The office was a mess, papers scattered everywhere as they searched for evidence of Vince's betrayal. Look at this, Robert pointed to a series of documents. Sales contracts for equipment to farms that don't exist. Fake addresses, forged signatures, and the amounts. All directed to accounts Vince opened without your authorization, using company documents. Robert shook his head. Arthur, this is much worse than we thought. It's not just theft, it's a sophisticated money laundering operation. Arthur felt his stomach churn. How long do you think this has been going on? From the documents I found, at least 2 years, maybe more. 2 years. Arthur sat down heavily. Eleanor was right then. What do you mean? In the last few months before she passed, she became strange, nervous. She said there was something wrong with Vince, that I should pay more attention to the business. Arthur covered his face with his hands. I didn't listen. I was too focused on her health problems. Robert studied his friend with concern. Arthur, is there something else you haven't told me? The girl, Lily. She heard things that suggest Vince is involved in fraudulent purchases of rural land. Poor families selling properties for ridiculous amounts. My God, that explains where the money he's laundering is coming from. Robert stood up. We need to go to the police. I can't. Not yet. Why not? Arthur hesitated. The girls. If I report Vince now, he'll know they provided me with information. They could be in danger. So what do you want to do? I need to know more. Understand the extent of the scheme before I act. At that moment, Arthur's phone rang. It was Alma. Arthur, you need to come home. Father Michael is here and there's something you both need to know. When Arthur arrived home, he found a tense scene in the living room. Father Michael was sitting across from the girls, while Alma stood nervously. Father, what happened? Vince came to see me yesterday. He's disturbed. He asked if you had contacted me, if you had talked about problems at the company. Father Michael paused, and he asked about 2 children who might be causing him trouble. Sarah instinctively held Lily's hand. He knows about you, Arthur said, addressing the girls. How? Asked Sarah. Vince has eyes all over town. Someone must have seen you with me yesterday. Father Michael leaned forward. Arthur, I need to understand what's happening. Why would Vince be worried about children? Arthur looked at Alma, who avoided his gaze. Because they witnessed his conversations about illegal business. What kind of business? Money laundering, fraudulent land purchases. Arthur took a deep breath. Vince has been using my company for financial crimes for years. The priest paled. Arthur, this is very serious. I know what I need to do, but I can't put these children at risk. At that moment, Alma finally spoke. There's something you all need to know. Everyone turned to her. Vince is my son. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur stared at her in disbelief. "Your son?" "I had him when I was very young. I gave him up for adoption, but years later I found out he had been adopted by Eleanor's family." Alma fought back tears. "When I started working here, I didn't know he was your brother-in-law. By the time I found out, it was too late." "That's why you never liked him," Arthur murmured, the pieces clicking into place. "I knew he was troubled since he was a child, but I never imagined he could stoop to this." Lily, who had remained quiet, suddenly stood up. "I remember one more thing." Everyone looked at her. "Vince talked about a hospital, about a woman who knew too much." She looked at Arthur. "He said her name. Eleanor." Arthur's world stopped. What? What did he say exactly? That she was asking too many questions, that it was better for her to keep quiet, or... Lily stopped, realizing she had said something important. "Or what, Lily? Or she could have accidents, like other people who asked too many questions." Arthur felt his legs give way. He sat down heavily, the terrible possibility starting to form in his mind. Eleanor's surgery, which should have been simple, the unexpected complications. "When did you hear this conversation?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Just before the lady got sick," Lily answered innocently. Father Michael and Alma exchanged alarmed glances. Sarah pulled Lily close to her. Finally, understanding the true extent of the danger they were in, Arthur looked up, and when he spoke, his voice was filled with a cold fury none of them had ever seen before. "He killed my wife." Arthur's words echoed through the room like a gunshot, leaving everyone paralyzed. Father Michael was the first to react, rising quickly. "Arthur, you can't make accusations like that without proof. These are very serious things." "Proof?" Arthur laughed bitterly. "My wife was investigating Vince's business dealings before the surgery. She was nervous, worried, saying she had discovered something terrible. And now this girl tells me she heard Vince threatening Eleanor weeks before the operation." Alma approached him, her hands trembling. "Arthur, I know Vince is capable of many bad things, but this what? Is it too much for your son?" Arthur's voice was laced with pain and fury. "Did you know he was threatening my wife and you didn't tell me? I didn't know. If I had known, I would have what? Protected him, like you always have." Sarah held Lily tighter, frightened by the tension that had taken over the room. The 4-year-old didn't fully understand what she had caused, but she could tell everyone was very upset. "I didn't do anything wrong," Lily murmured, starting to cry. "No, my dear, you didn't do anything wrong," said Father Michael, kneeling in front of her. "You are helping to uncover the truth." Arthur forced himself to calm down, realizing he was scaring the girl who had saved his life. "Lily, forgive me for yelling. You're not to blame for any of this." But the damage was done. Lily shrank into the sofa, and Sarah wrapped her in a protective embrace. "I think we should go," the teenager said. "This is getting too dangerous." "No," Arthur stood up. "You can't leave now. If Vince knows you can testify against him, you won't be safe anywhere." "And we are here?" Before Arthur could answer, the phone rang. Alma answered, her face paling as she listened. "That was the corner store from old Mr. Joachim," she said, hanging up. "Vince was there an hour ago, asking if I had been shopping with 2 children. He described you both perfectly." The blood in everyone's veins ran cold. Vince was hunting for the girls. "There," said Father Michael. "Now you really can't leave here? At least, until we resolve this." "Resolve it how?" asked Sarah, her voice filled with panic. "This man killed Mr. Winston's wife. What wouldn't he do to 2 street kids?" At that moment, Lily spoke softly. "There's one more thing." Everyone turned to her. "I saw a lady at the hospital, a lady who was crying a lot." She looked at Arthur. "She looked like Vince. She said she had done something very bad. Alma covered her mouth with her hands. My God, you saw Mrs. Albright. Who is Mrs. Albright? Asked Arthur. Vince's adoptive mother. She's worked at the hospital for 20 years. Alma sat down heavily. If she was there the night of Eleanor's surgery, she might have helped Vince, Father Michael completed, horrified. Arthur felt a cold rage take over his body. Not only had Vince stolen from his company and likely caused Eleanor's death, but he had involved other people in the crime. Where does she live? Arthur. No, Father Michael grabbed his arm. You can't go after her alone. If what we're thinking really happened, you could be putting yourself in danger. And what do you suggest? That I sit here with my arms crossed while my wife's murderer walks free in the city? I suggest you go to the proper authorities. With what proof? The testimony of a 4-year-old about conversations she overheard on the street? At that moment, Lily stood up and walked to the bookshelf where the photos of Eleanor were. She picked up one of the frames and studied it intently. It was her, she said softly. What, dear? Asked Alma. The lady I saw crying at the hospital. It was her. Lily pointed to a photo where Eleanor appeared next to an older woman. They were together. Arthur looked at the photo. It was from last Christmas, shortly before Eleanor started feeling ill. Next to her was Margaret Albright, her mother. No, Lily, that's Eleanor's mother, not Vince's mother. No, the girl insisted. It was her who was crying at the hospital, and she said she had helped someone in the family, but that it was very wrong. The world stopped for Arthur. Margaret Albright was at the hospital the night of Eleanor's surgery. If she had done something to harm her own daughter. That can't be true, he murmured. I remember because she spoke just like Eleanor. Same voice, same way. Lily kept looking at the photo, and she was crying a lot, saying she was forced to do it. Forced by whom? By Vince. He said if she didn't help, he would hurt more people in the family. Father Michael and Alma exchanged looks of horror. The situation was much worse than they had imagined. Arthur, the priest said carefully, you need to understand that if this is true, Mrs. Albright could be both guilty and a victim. A victim? Arthur stood up violently. She helped kill my wife. Under duress. If Vince was blackmailing her, I don't care. She chose to sacrifice Eleanor to protect herself. Sarah watched the conversation with growing apprehension. She was beginning to understand that they had gotten into something much bigger and more dangerous than she had imagined. Mr. Winston, she said, are you going to hand us over to this Vince? Never. Then what are you going to do with us? We can't stay here forever. Arthur paused, realizing he didn't have an answer. He was so consumed by a thirst for justice that he hadn't thought about the girl's future. We'll take it one problem at a time. No, Sarah said firmly. I want to know now. Because if you're thinking of doing something dangerous, I'm not letting my sister near it. Sarah is right, agreed Father Michael. Arthur, you're talking about confronting people who might be murderers. These children can't be involved in this. And where will they go? Vince already knows they exist. If I don't act now, if you don't act intelligently, you could end up putting everyone in more danger, interrupted Alma. At that moment, a car pulled up in front of the house. Through the glass, they saw a silver sedan from which a man Arthur recognized, immediately got out. Vince, he whispered. His brother-in-law was walking toward the door with determined steps, carrying a leather briefcase and an expression that promised nothing good. He came here, said Sarah, panic evident in her voice. Take the girls upstairs to their room, Arthur ordered. Now! And you? Asked Father Michael. I'm going to find out what he wants. Arthur, don't do anything rash. I won't, but I'm not going to hide in my own house either. When the doorbell rang, Arthur waited for the girls to go upstairs before answering. Alma and Father Michael remained in the living room, tense. Arthur opened the door and found Vince smiling, but his eyes were as cold as ice. "Brother-in-law, good to find you home. Can we talk?" Arthur opened the door completely, allowing Vince to enter. His brother-in-law was 42, with dark hair slicked back with gel and a smile that never reached his eyes. He wore an expensive navy blue suit, but there was something predatory in his movements. "Vince, what a surprise." "Really? I thought you'd be expecting me." Vince walked into the living room and greeted Father Michael with a nod. "Father, Alma." His tone was polite but loaded with tension. "What do you want?" Arthur asked directly. "Straight to the point. I like that." Vince sat down uninvited, placing the briefcase on his lap. "I heard you've been asking questions about me at the company." "So what?" "So that could be problematic for both of us." Father Michael spoke up. "Vince, if there are problems at the company, it's best to resolve them with transparency." "Father, with all due respect, this is not the church's business." Vince smiled coldly. "It's family business." "Family?" Arthur laughed without humor. "You call stealing from my company for 2 years family?" "Stealing is a strong word, brother-in-law. I prefer to say I made some adjustments to the investments." "Adjustments? You opened accounts in my name, forged my signature, laundered money from illegal operations." Vince didn't seem surprised. "I see you have good sources of information. Curiously, these sources appeared in your life very recently." Arthur felt his blood run cold. Vince knew about the girls. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. 2 street kids who have been telling you interesting stories." Vince opened the briefcase and took out some photographs. "One is 4, the other is 16, names Lily and Sarah." The photos were of them, taken when they were in the square, sleeping under the bridge, walking around town. Someone had been watching them for a long time. "How did you get these?" "I have eyes all over the city, Arthur, especially in places where people do discreet business." Vince put the photos away. "These girls saw things they shouldn't have. They heard conversations that weren't for their ears. And what do you plan to do?" "That depends on you." Alma, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Vince, these are innocent children." "Innocent?" He laughed. "Alma, you've always been naive. These children are witnesses to operations involving millions of dollars. There's no innocence when it comes to that much money." "What operations?" asked Father Michael. Vince studied the priest intently. "Do you really want to know, Father? Because once you know, you can't feign ignorance." "I'm prepared to hear the truth." "The truth." Vince leaned back in the armchair. "The truth is that there are rural families all over the region selling their properties for ridiculous prices because they can't read the contracts they sign. The truth is that there are corrupt bureaucrats facilitating these sales in exchange for generous commissions. And the truth is that there are respectable businessmen like my brother-in-law here who benefit from these deals without asking questions." "I never knew about any of this," Arthur protested. "No? Then how do you explain the extraordinary profits your company has had in the last 2 years? Where do you think the money came from to buy that new BMW, to pay for Eleanor's expensive treatment?" Arthur paled. It was true that the company had prospered inexplicably in recent years, but he had attributed it to Vince's management competence. "You used dirty money to pay for my wife's treatment." "I used clean money that had been dirty at some point. What's the difference?" "The difference is that you turned my company into a money laundering machine. And it worked perfectly until you decided to ask questions." Vince leaned forward. "Arthur, you have 2 options. You can continue pretending you don't know anything and we all keep making money. Or you can try to be a hero and lose everything: company, house, reputation. And the girls? The girls are a problem that needs to be solved. What kind of resolution? Arthur's voice was dangerously low. The kind that ensures they don't talk to anyone else about what they heard. Father Michael stood up abruptly. Vince, are you talking about threatening children? I'm talking about protecting legitimate businesses from inconvenient witnesses. There's nothing legitimate about what you do, Arthur exploded. No? Then why did Eleanor never report it when she found out? The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. What do you mean? Your wife discovered our operations months before she got sick. She confronted me, threatened to expose everything. Vince smiled cruelly, but she changed her mind when I explained the consequences. What consequences? For you, mainly. Did you know that technically you are a partner in all the companies that fraudulently bought land? Your signature is on the papers, Arthur. If someone investigates, you go to jail with me. Arthur stood up violently. You forged my signature. Prove it. The documents are all in official registries with notarized signatures. Good luck explaining that to a judge. You're lying. Am I? Then why did Eleanor decide to stay quiet? Why did she die with this secret? Vince stood up too. Because she knew that reporting me would destroy you too. Alma covered her face with her hands, tears streaming between her fingers. My God, Vince, what have you become? I became successful, Mother, something you always wanted for me. Mother? Father Michael looked at Alma in shock. Vince smiled with cruel satisfaction. Oh, she didn't tell you? Alma is my biological mother. She gave me up for adoption as a baby, but she always knew where I was. You're using that against her too? Asked Arthur, the pieces falling into place. I'm protecting our family, Arthur. All of us. Vince picked up his briefcase. Now, about the girls. Where are they? They're not here. Don't lie to me. My informant saw them enter this house yesterday and didn't see them leave. At that moment, a noise came from upstairs. Everyone looked at the ceiling. Lily, be quiet, came Sarah's whispered voice. Vince smiled. I thought you said they weren't here. They won't talk to you, Arthur said firmly. I'm not going to hurt them, if that's what you're thinking. I just want to have a civilized conversation. Like the conversation you had with Eleanor. For a moment, Vince's mask slipped, revealing something dark and dangerous. Underneath. Eleanor made her choices, Arthur, just as you need to make yours now. What choices? Convince the girls that it's better to forget what they heard. In return, I keep you out of prison, and we all continue our business as before. And if I refuse, then you'll find out there are people much worse than me in this food chain. People who have no patience for inconvenient witnesses or heroic brothers-in-law. Vince walked toward the stairs. I'm going up to talk to the girls now. No, Arthur blocked his path. You're not getting near them. Arthur, Vince's voice turned icy. Do you really want to find out how far I can go to protect our business? Because I guarantee you won't like the answer. Upstairs, Lily and Sarah heard every word through the wooden floor. Sarah held her younger sister, both trembling with fear. Sarah, Lily whispered, is the bad man going to hurt us? I don't know, Sarah replied, trying to sound brave. But if he comes up, we run to the back room and jump out the window. Downstairs, the tension had reached a breaking point. Arthur and Vince faced each other, while Father Michael and Alma watched, paralyzed with fear of what might happen next. The standoff was interrupted by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. Vince paused halfway up the stairs, annoyed by the interruption. Arthur seized the moment to better position himself between his brother-in-law and the upper floor. Aren't you going to answer? Vince asked sarcastically. Alma walked to the window and peeked out. It's Robert, Arthur's lawyer. Perfect, Vince muttered. The more people who know about this conversation, the better. Robert Davis entered, carrying a bulky folder, and greeted everyone, but his expression changed when he saw Vince. I didn't expect to find you here, Vince. Robert, Vince came down from the stairs. What an interesting coincidence. Actually, it's not a coincidence. I came to discuss some documents I found at the company. Robert looked at Arthur. Documents you should see. What kind of documents? Asked Vince, trying to seem casual. Sales contracts, bank transfers, powers of attorney. Robert opened the folder. Fascinating stuff. Vince tensed up. Robert, you know these are confidential company matters. Confidential, yes, but not illegal. At least they shouldn't be. Robert pulled out several sheets. For example, this power of attorney here. It gives Vince broad powers to negotiate on Arthur's behalf. And what's the problem? The problem is that Arthur never signed this. How can you be sure? Robert smiled. Because I had a graphological analysis done on all the signatures. 40% of them are forgeries. Vince's face paled slightly, but he maintained his composure. Graphology isn't definitive legal proof. No, but combined with other evidence. Robert continued to pull out documents, like these transfers to accounts Arthur never opened, or these contracts with shell companies. Robert, Vince's voice became dangerous. You're playing with fire. I'm doing my job as a lawyer. At that moment, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs. She had managed to slip away from Sarah, curious about the voices she heard. Uncle Arthur, she called innocently, can I come down? Everyone looked up. Vince studied the girl with predatory attention. Of course, dear, Arthur replied quickly, but stay close to me. Lily ran down and hid behind Arthur, but her large eyes watched Vince with recognition and fear. It's you, she murmured. Hi, little one, Vince said, forcing a smile. Do you know me? Lily nodded, clutching Arthur's shirt. You're the bad man who made people cry. Bad. A man? That's a mean thing to say. Vince crouched down to her level. What else do you think you saw me do? Vince, warned Father Michael, leave the child alone. I'm just talking. Vince kept his eyes on Lily. Tell me, little one, did you tell Uncle Arthur about our conversations in the square? Lily looked at Arthur, confused. What conversations? You know, when you were hiding behind the trees listening to the grown-ups talk. I never hid, I was just playing. Of course. And what did you hear when you were playing? Robert watched the scene with growing discomfort. Vince, why are you interrogating a child? Because this child heard things that could cause a lot of trouble for a lot of people. Lily suddenly perked up. Oh, you want to know about the lady from the hospital? Vince froze. What lady from the hospital? The one who was crying a lot. She said she did a bad thing so you wouldn't hurt more people. Lily, Arthur tried to interrupt, sensing the danger, but the girl continued. She said you promised not to hurt anyone else in the family if she helped, but then she got really sad. The silence in the room was deafening. Robert looked from Vince to Arthur, trying to understand the implications. What lady was this, Lily? Robert asked gently. Eleanor's mum. She was at the hospital the night Eleanor got sick. Robert turned to Vince. Was Mrs. Albright involved in this? The girl is confused, Vince said quickly. Street kids have very vivid imaginations. I'm not confused, Lily protested. I remember everything. The lady said you told her if she didn't help you would hurt Uncle Arthur and other people in the family. That's a lie. And she was crying so much because her daughter was going to get sick because of what she did. Robert was jotting notes quickly in a notepad. Lily, can you tell me exactly where you were when you heard this? Robert, no. Arthur tried to protect the girl. This is too dangerous. Arthur, if what this child is saying is true, we have evidence of blackmail, coercion, and possibly... He looked at Vince. Something much worse. You can't prove anything, Vince said, but his confidence was shaken. I can try. Especially if Mrs. Albright confirms what the girl is saying. Mrs. Albright won't confirm anything. Why not? Because she's no longer in a condition to speak to anyone. Arthur's blood ran cold. What do you mean by that? I mean, she had a stroke 2 weeks ago. Very convenient, don't you think? Robert dropped his papers. Are you saying that? I'm not saying anything, just commenting that elderly people sometimes have unexpected health problems. At that moment, Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. Lily, get back here now. Ah, the older sister, Vince observed. You must be Sarah. And you must be the man my sister has nightmares about, she replied, coming down the stairs quickly. To get Lily. Nightmares? How interesting. And what are these nightmares about? Sarah took Lily by the hand. About bad men who hurt people when they know too much. Kids really do have imaginations. It's not imagination when they live on the street and see things they shouldn't. Vince studied Sarah with new attention. There was something about the teenager's attitude that bothered him. And what did you see, Sarah? I saw you talking to men in the square about families selling land cheap. I saw you laughing when you talked about people who couldn't read contracts. That's not a crime. I saw you talking about how easy it was to trick poor and illiterate people. Robert continued to take notes. Sarah, would you be able to recognize these men if you saw them again? I can, and I know where some of them live. Vince stood up abruptly. Enough. This conversation is over. For me, it's just beginning, Robert said. I have documentary evidence of fraud, forgery, and money laundering. Now I have witnesses to blackmail and coercion, and possibly much more. Your witnesses are 2 street kids with no credibility. My witnesses are 2 victims of a system you exploited, and they have details that only someone who actually witnessed the events could know. Vince looked around the room, realizing he was cornered. His eyes stopped on Alma. Mother, he said quietly, are you just going to stand there while they destroy our family? Alma was pale, tears streaming down her face. Vince, what have you done? I did what needed to be done to succeed in life. And how many people did you hurt in the process? People hurt themselves by being weak and naive. And Eleanor, was she weak and naive? Eleanor was a threat to our business. The silence that followed was broken by Arthur. You just confessed. Vince realized his mistake, but it was too late. Robert had recorded everything on his phone. This recording is worthless in court. Maybe not, but it's enough to start an official investigation. Robert put his phone away. And with the documentary evidence I have, plus the girls' testimonies. The girls won't testify, Vince interrupted. Why not? Because they're homeless minors. Who's going to believe them over a respected businessman? I will, Father Michael said firmly, and I will ensure they have all the legal protection they need. And so will I, added Alma, surprising everyone. Enough, Vince, I can't protect you anymore. Vince looked at his mother with fury. You'll regret this. I already regret a lot of things, mostly not stopping you sooner. Vince picked up his briefcase and walked toward the door. You don't know who you're dealing with. Yes, we do, Arthur replied. We're dealing with a coward who blackmailed an old woman to kill my wife. Prove it. And with that final word, Vince left the house, leaving everyone in a tense silence, knowing that the war had just begun. 3 days had passed since the confrontation with Vince, and the tension in Arthur's house was palpable. Robert had intensified his investigation, working with a forensic accountant to unravel the extent of the financial crimes, while the girls remained confined to the house for their safety. Lily was restless, not understanding why she couldn't play in the yard or go out on the street anymore. Sarah, in turn, stood constant guard, sleeping little and startling at any noise. "When can we leave here?" Sarah asked during breakfast, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "When it's safe," Arthur replied, but his own voice carried uncertainty. "And when will that be?" "I don't know." The brutal honesty of the answer made everyone uncomfortable. Alma prepared coffee in silence, the weight of guilt for being Vince's mother consuming her day after day. The phone rang, making everyone jump. Arthur answered cautiously. "Robert? Good. What do you mean they found what?" His face paled as he listened. "Are you sure?" "My God! Yes, I'm on my way now." "What happened?" Alma asked. "Robert found documents at Mrs. Albright's house. She had kept evidence of everything." "What kind of evidence?" "Recordings of her conversations with Vince. Copies. Of the documents he forced her to sign at the hospital. Everything." Sarah stood up abruptly. "Does this mean it's over? That he's going to be arrested? It means we have a real chance of proving everything in court. And us? Will we have to testify?" Arthur hesitated. "Probably." "No," Sarah said firmly. "Lily is not going through that." "Sarah, I understand your concern, but you don't understand anything. You don't know what it's like to be a child and have to talk to adults about scary things." Lily, who had remained quiet, suddenly spoke. "I want to help." "Lily." "No." Sarah knelt before her sister. "You don't understand what this means." "Yes, I do. It means the bad man won't hurt anyone anymore. But you could get hurt in the process. I've been hurt a lot on the street. At least now it's to help good people." Arthur's heart tightened at the girl's precocious maturity. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. Alma went to answer and returned with a worried expression. "It's a woman. She says she's the girl's aunt." Sarah froze. "Aunt Susan." "She said that name." "My God," Sarah whispered. "She came to get us." A woman in her early 40s entered the room, too thin, with nervous eyes that darted around quickly. She wore simple but clean clothes and clutched an old purse in her arms. "Sarah? Lily?" Her trembling voice revealed genuine emotion. "Girls, it's me, Aunt Susan." Lily ran to her instinctively, but Sarah remained cautious. "Where have you been? I tried to find you for months." "I was hiding. I had some problems." Susan hugged Lily, tears streaming down her face. "But now I've come to get you." "Problems? What kind of problems?" Arthur asked. Susan looked at him with suspicion. "And who are you?" "Arthur Winston. The girls are staying here." "Why? Did they do something wrong?" "On the contrary," intervened Father Michael, who had arrived minutes earlier. "They helped expose a corruption network." "Corruption?" Susan seemed genuinely confused. Sarah studied her aunt carefully. There was something different about her, something she couldn't pinpoint. "Aunt Susan, did you get my letter? The one I sent in the mail?" "What letter?" "The one that told you where we were living, about our situation." "I didn't receive any letter." Susan paused. "But I found out you were here through other means." "What other means?" Susan hesitated, and in that hesitation Sarah realized something was very wrong. "Who told you where we were?" "A man, a businessman from town. He said he knew you." Arthur's blood ran cold. "What businessman?" "I don't remember the name right." "Vinny? Vince? Vince sent you here?" "He said the girls were fine, but that it would be better if they were with family." Sarah placed herself protectively in front of Lily. "Aunt Susan, what did he offer you?" "What do you mean?" "What did he give you in exchange for coming to get us?" "Sarah, how can you think such a thing?" But the teenager knew the signs. There was something in her aunt's posture, in the way she avoided eye contact, that reminded her of desperate people who made dangerous deals. "How much money did he give you?" Susan paled. "It's not about money." "Then what is it about?" Tears began to stream down Susan's face. "Sarah, you don't understand. I was in a lot of debt. Dangerous people were after me. When this Vince showed up offering help, he blackmailed you. He saved me. He paid my debts, gave me money to start a new life. In exchange for what? For taking you too far away from here, to another state where you'd be safe. Father Michael spoke up. Susan, do you understand you're being used? I'm saving my nieces. You're handing over two important witnesses to a dangerous man. He didn't seem dangerous. He seemed concerned about their well-being. Arthur stood up. Susan, this man is responsible for serious crimes, including blackmail, fraud, and possibly murder. That's impossible. He was very kind to me. Kind enough to buy you, Sarah said bitterly. It's not like that. Then what is it like? You disappear for months, don't answer my letters, and suddenly show up here after talking to the man who's trying to hurt us. Lily, who had been hugging her aunt, pulled away. Aunt Susan, did you come to get us because the bad man sent you? No, dear. I came because I love you. But did he give you money for it? Susan couldn't answer. Her expression confirmed everyone's worst fears. How much? Arthur asked. That doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Because now we understand that Vince is willing to pay to remove the witnesses from the city. He said you were in danger. Here, that it would be better if you went far away. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him, Susan whispered. I needed to believe him. Alma watched the scene with growing sadness. How many people has my son managed to corrupt? At that moment, Robert arrived urgently, carrying a folder full of documents. Arthur, we need to talk. I found... Who is this woman? The girl's aunt, sent by Vince to take them away. Robert stopped in the middle of the room. This changes everything. What do you mean? Because one of the documents I found at Mrs. Albright's house specifically mentions a plan to remove the witnesses from the city using family members as intermediaries. Everyone looked at Susan, who turned completely pale. He has a detailed plan, Robert continued, including amounts paid to ensure the cooperation of relatives. Susan, Father Michael said gently, you need to tell us everything. Your life and the girls' lives may depend on it. Susan collapsed into sobs. I didn't know I was doing something wrong. I thought I was saving the girls. Tell us exactly what Vince told you. He said the girls had gotten involved with dangerous people, that they were being used to harm honest businessmen, that it would be better if they stayed away until things calmed down. And how much did he pay you? $50,000. Half now, half when I brought the girls to the address he gave me. What address? Susan took a crumpled piece of paper from her purse. It was the address of a farm on the outskirts of town. Robert examined the paper. I know this place. It was recently bought by one of Vince's shell companies. That means he didn't just want to remove the girls from the city. He wanted to isolate them completely. Sarah held Lily tightly. What was he going to do to us? Probably keep them locked up until the trial was over, or worse. Susan looked at her nieces with growing horror. My God, what have I almost done? You almost handed two innocent children over to a desperate man, Arthur replied. But it's not too late to do the right thing. What do you want me to do? Robert smiled for the first time in days. We want you to do exactly what Vince expects, with one small difference. Robert's plan was risky, but it was the only chance they had to get definitive evidence against Vince. Susan would call him, confirming she had the girls, and arrange to meet at the farm as planned. The difference was that the police would be waiting. I don't like this, Sarah said for the 10th time. What if something goes wrong? It won't, Robert assured her, checking the recording device Susan would carry. We'll have undercover officers all over the area. And what if he finds out it's a trap? That's why we need everything to look natural. Susan will go with you, but you'll stay in the car until we're sure it's safe." Lily was sitting on Alma's lap, still not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. To her, it was like a game of hide-and-seek with adults. "Is Aunt Susan going to pretend she got us?" she asked. "Exactly," Robert replied, "and you and Sarah will stay well hidden while the adults talk." "Like when I hide under the bridge?" "Similar, but much safer." Arthur watched the preparations with a knot in his stomach. He was putting 2 children at risk to get justice for the woman he had lost. Would Eleanor approve? "Arthur," Father Michael approached him, "are you sure about this?" "No, but I don't see any other alternative. If we don't stop Vince now, he'll get away and could hurt more people. And what if he suspects? Then we improvise." That afternoon at 4 o'clock, Susan called Vince from a payphone in the center of town. "I got them," she said, controlling her voice. "The girls are with me." "Excellent. Any problems?" "No. They trusted me, just like you said they would." "And Arthur, did he try to stop you?" "He tried to talk to me, but I explained it was a family matter." "Perfect. Bring them to the farm at 6. You remember the address?" "I remember." "Vince, are you sure you won't hurt them?" "Susan, they'll only be there for a few days, until I sort out some business problems. Then they can go back home." "Okay. And Susan, don't talk to anyone else about this. It's better for everyone." When she hung up, her hands were shaking. Robert, who was listening to the conversation through an earpiece, gave a nod of approval. He bought it now for phase 2. An hour before the scheduled meeting, 3 cars left Arthur's house in different directions. In the first were Robert and 2 undercover police officers. In the second, Father Michael and Alma, who had insisted on going to try to talk to her son one last time. In the third, Arthur driving with Susan in the passenger seat and the girls in the back. The farm was 20 miles from the city, on a dirt road that wound through sugarcane fields. It was an isolated location, perfect for meetings no one should witness. "I'm scared," Lily confessed when they saw the property's gate. "It's going to be okay," Sarah said, but her own voice trembled. "Uncle Arthur won't let anything bad happen." Arthur parked the car 200 yards from the gate, as planned. From there, they could see the main house of the farm, a simple 1-story building with a porch in front. "Susan will go there alone first," Arthur explained. "If Vince is alone and everything seems safe, we'll give the agreed-upon signal. And if it's not safe, then we leave immediately." Susan got out of the car, checked that the recorder was working, and walked toward the house. Her legs were wobbly, but she knew there was no turning back. Vince was waiting for her on the porch, smiling. He wore casual clothes, jeans and a polo shirt, as if it were a normal social gathering. "Susan, you really did it. Where are the girls?" "In the car. I want to make sure they'll be okay before I bring them." Of course. Come in, let's talk." The house was sparsely furnished, with the air of a temporary place. There was only a table, 2 chairs, and an old refrigerator in what seemed to be the main room. "Have a seat. Want anything?" "Water, soda." "No, thank you, Vince. I need you to guarantee that the girls will be okay." "Of course they'll be okay. They're just children." "Then why do you need to take them out of the city?" Vince studied Susan carefully. "Because they got involved in adult matters. They saw things they shouldn't have." "What kind of things?" "Business. Private conversations. You know how it is. People make deals that can be misinterpreted." "And you think 2 street kids can cause trouble for businessmen?" "I do." Vince leaned back in his chair. "Especially when there are ill-intentioned people using these children to create problems, like Arthur." "Exactly. Arthur is using the girls to try to harm me in business." "Why?" "Because he discovered some irregularities at the company. Nothing serious, just accounting issues. But he's exaggerating the situation." Susan knew she was being recorded and tried to ask the questions Robert had suggested. What kind of irregularities? Money transfers, contracts, that sort of thing? Normal business that might look suspicious to someone who doesn't understand. And the girls witnessed these irregularities. They heard conversations they didn't understand correctly. But you're willing to pay $50,000 for them to keep. And quiet. Vince paused. I'm paying for them to be safe. There are people involved in these businesses who are not as patient as I am. Dangerous people? Let's just say they are people who don't like their business exposed. And what if the girls talk anyway? They won't talk if they're far from here. After a few weeks, when everything calms down, they can go back home. And if they don't want to keep quiet? Vince's expression hardened. Susan, you're asking a lot of questions. I just want to understand what will happen to my nieces. Your nieces will be fine as long as they do what's best for them. Which is to keep quiet. Which is to forget conversations they didn't understand about matters that are none of their business. Outside, Arthur was watching the house with binoculars. He hadn't seen any sign of other cars or people yet, but something bothered him. It's taking too long, Sarah said nervously. It hasn't even been 10 minutes. It feels like an eternity. Lily was quiet, watching the farm intently. Uncle Arthur, there are more people here. What do you mean? There are cars hidden behind the house. I saw the sun glinting off the glass. Arthur adjusted his binoculars. Lily was right. There were at least 2 cars parked behind the building, out of sight from the road. My God, he muttered. It's a trap. At the same moment, inside the house, Vince stood up and walked to the window. Susan, where exactly did you leave the girls? In the car, like we agreed. What car? Arthur's. Arthur is here. He just brought us. He's leaving after. Vince smiled, but it was a cold smile. Actually, he's not. What do you mean? Because this is the end of the line. For all of you. Susan felt her blood run cold. Vince, you promised. I promised the girls would be fine if they cooperated. But you didn't come to cooperate. You came to try and get me arrested. What are you talking about? About the recorder you're carrying, about the fact that there are probably police officers hiding around here. Vince walked to the back door and gave a signal. Do you all really think I'm an idiot? 2 men entered the house, burly types who were clearly not farmers. One of them was carrying a cell phone. Boss, one of them, said, we've confirmed. 3 cars in the area, at least 6 people, 2 are cops. Perfect. Vince turned to Susan. Now we're going to do things my way. Outside, Arthur had seen the men entering the house. He immediately called Robert. It's a trap. There are more people here. Get out of there now, Robert yelled over the phone. But when Arthur tried to start the car, the engine wouldn't turn over. Someone had sabotaged the vehicle while they were watching the house. We're stuck, he said to the girls, who were now visibly terrified. What are we going to do? Sarah asked. Before Arthur could answer, a car blocked the road behind them. 2 men got out and walked toward their car, smiling in a not-so-friendly way. Get out of the car, one of them yelled. All of you. Lily started to cry. Uncle Arthur, I don't want to go with the bad men. You won't, Arthur promised, but he knew he was promising something he might not be able to deliver. The situation had spiraled completely out of control, and now they were all in Vince's hands. Vince's men led Arthur and the girls into the house, where they found Susan tied to a chair, the broken recorder on the floor beside her. Her face was pale with terror, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Aunt Susan! Lily cried, running toward her. Quiet, one of the men ordered, grabbing the girl by the arm. Let her go! Sarah protested, trying to protect her sister. Vince watched the scene with cruel satisfaction. Now we're all together, a happy family. Vince, please, Susan begged. The girls are not to blame for anything. Let them go. Let them go, after all the trouble I went through to bring them here. Vince laughed. "No, Susan. Now that they're here, they're going to stay for a while." Arthur quickly assessed the situation. There were 3 men besides Vince, all appearing to be professionals. The house had only one visible main exit, and the windows were small. It wouldn't be easy to escape with 2 children. "What do you want, Vince?" "I want you to understand that some business is bigger than our personal differences." Vince sat on the table, swinging his legs casually. "You thought you could take me down using 2 street kids as witnesses." "They only told the truth." "The truth?" Vince guffawed. "The truth is, you're broke, Arthur. Your company has only survived in recent years because of my investments. Investments of stolen money. Money is money. The origin doesn't matter when you're saving your family business. It matters to me. It mattered to Eleanor, too. That's why she had to be discouraged." The casual confirmation that he had been responsible for Eleanor's situation hit Arthur like a punch. "You killed my wife. I saved you from a woman who was going to destroy everything we built. We built? You stole everything. We expanded the business. We turned a small company into a profitable operation, using land stolen from poor families, using opportunities that others were too weak to seize." Lily, who had remained quiet, suddenly spoke. "Why do you make people cry?" Vince looked at her intently. "Because sometimes it's necessary, little one. My mom used to say that making people cry was something bad people do. Your mom was wrong. Sometimes we have to be tough to get what we want. But I don't like it when people cry. You'll learn not to care." Sarah placed herself in front of her sister. "She won't learn anything from you." "Ah, the protective older sister. How touching." Vince stood up. "But you two don't understand the situation. You're not on the street anymore, where you can do what you want. Now you're under my responsibility." "For how long?" Arthur asked. "For as long as it takes for you to understand that it's better to forget everything you think you know about my business." "And if we don't forget?" Vince didn't answer, but his silence was eloquent. At that moment, one of the men approached him. "Boss, we have a problem." "What problem?" "The cops who were in the area have disappeared. They're no longer at the spots where we identified them." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "They probably realized it was a trap and went for backup." Vince's face darkened. "How much time do we have?" "An hour at most before they come back with more people." "Then let's speed up the schedule." Vince looked at Arthur. "You're going to call your lawyer now and tell him you've changed your mind about the charges." "Never." "Yes, you will. Because if you don't, very unpleasant things will happen to these children." Susan screamed from the chair where she was tied. "Vince, you can't threaten children." "I can and I am. Arthur, the phone." One of the men handed a cell phone to Arthur, who looked at the girls. Lily was trembling visibly, while Sarah tried to maintain a brave expression. "I'm not doing it." "No? Then maybe a demonstration will help." Vince gave a signal, and one of the men held Sarah by the arms. "Let me go!" she shouted, struggling against the man. "Vince, stop!" Arthur yelled. "Call Robert now." All right, but let her go." Vince gave another signal, and the man released Sarah, who ran to be near. "Lily." Arthur took the phone, but before he could dial, they heard a noise outside. Cars approaching rapidly. "Damn it!" one of the men muttered. "They're back!" Vince ran to the window. It was 3 police cars and 2 civilian cars. "How did they get here so fast?" "Boss, we need to go, now!" "And take everyone?" "There's no time. We have to choose." Vince looked at the group in the room. Arthur, 2 children, and a desperate woman. His mind calculated quickly. "We take the kids. They're the ones that matter." "No!" Susan screamed. "Please!" "Sarah and Lily, you're coming with me. The others stay." "I'm not going anywhere without my sister," Sarah said firmly. "It's not a choice." For me it is. If you want to take Lily, you have to take me too. Sarah, no, Lily whispered. Yes. We stay together, remember? Always together. Vince considered this for a moment. Having both would be better, more control over the situation. Fine, you two are coming with me. Where to? Arthur asked. Far away from here. And if you try to follow us or call more police, you'll never see these girls again. The police were positioning themselves. Outside, through the window, Arthur saw Robert getting out of one of the civilian cars, along with Father Michael and Alma. Vince, Alma said, shouting from the doorway. It's me, your mother. Can we talk? My mother? Vince stopped in the middle of the room. What is she doing here? Trying to save you, probably, one of his men muttered. Vince, please, Alma continued, let the children go. You can run, but you don't have to take them. She doesn't understand, Vince said to himself. She never understood. Maybe we should listen to her, Susan suggested. Shut up. Vince was losing control. Everybody shut up! Vince, Robert's voice echoed from outside. I know you're in there. Let's talk. It doesn't have to end like this. It's already over, Vince shouted back. It was over when you all decided to betray me. No one betrayed you. You chose this path. I chose to survive. I chose to succeed. You chose to hurt innocent people. At that moment, Lily broke free from Sarah's hand and walked toward Vince. Mister, she said in her tiny voice, can I say something? What? Are you sad? The question caught Vince off guard. What do you mean? You talk like the sad people I knew on the street. They were mad at everyone because they were so sad inside. I'm not sad. Yes, you are. I can see it in your eyes. For a moment, something wavered in Vince's expression. A vulnerability he had buried long ago. You don't understand anything, girl. Yes, I do. I understand that sad people sometimes do bad things because they hurt so much inside. Lily, Sarah whispered, come back here. But the girl kept looking at Vince with her big, sincere eyes. If you stop making people cry, the sadness will go away. It won't. Yes, it will, because when we're good, we feel better. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Vince hesitated. Vince's hesitation lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for one of his men to realize he was losing focus. Boss, we need to go, now. Vince blinked, and the momentary vulnerability vanished, replaced by a renewed hardness. You're right, girl. I am sad. Sad that I have to deal with people who don't understand business. That's not why you're sad, Lily insisted, with the unsettling intuition of children. Shut up and walk. Vince grabbed her by the arm, not violently but firmly. Sarah, you too. I'm not letting you take my sister. Then come along. But walk. Now. Outside, Alma's voice sounded increasingly desperate. Vince, my son, please, you weren't like this as a child. As a child, I was weak, he shouted back, like you. You were kind. Remember when you saved that hit-and-run dog? You cried all night taking care of it. I grew up. You didn't grow up. You just forgot who you really are. One of the men was checking the back exit when he came running back. Boss, they've surrounded the house. There are cops at every exit. What do you mean surrounded? At least 15 men. We're cornered. Vince cursed under his breath. He looked out the window and confirmed it. Police officers were strategically positioned around the property. Do we have weapons? 2 pistols. But it's not enough if they decide to storm the place. Then they won't storm it. Vince turned to Arthur. You're going to talk to them. You're going to say everything is fine, that we're negotiating. I'm not going to lie to protect you. You're going to lie to protect these children. Arthur looked at Lily and Sarah, who were huddled in the corner of the room. What exactly do you want? I want a way out. A car, a clear road to the state line. In exchange for what? In exchange for nothing bad happening to the girls. And after, when you reach the state line? We'll see then. Arthur knew that "we'll see then" meant Vince had no intention of releasing the girls. They knew too much, and he would need to keep them under his control permanently. I can't do that. You can, and you will. Vince gave a signal, and one of his men pointed a gun in the girls' direction. Susan started to cry louder. Please, Vince, they're just children. They're inconvenient witnesses. At that moment, Robert's voice echoed through a megaphone. Vince, we know you're in there. Let's talk. There's nothing to talk about, Vince shouted back. Yes, there is. Your mother wants to talk to you. My mother has already said too much. Vince, Alma's voice came through the megaphone now. Do you remember the story I used to tell you when you were little, about the boy who got lost in the forest? Vince paused. He remembered vaguely. Remember how he found his way back by following the stars his mother had taught him to find? What difference does that make now? It makes all the difference. You're lost, my son, but you can still find your way back. There's no way back for me. Yes, there is. There always is. Inside the house, Lily listened to the conversation between mother and son intently. There was something in Alma's voice that reminded her of her own mother in the few good moments she could recall. Mr. Vince, she said softly, your mother loves you. That doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Mothers always love their children, even when they do bad things. You don't understand the situation. I understand that you're hurting your mother, like I would be sad if I hurt Sarah. Vince looked at the girl, then at Sarah, who was holding her younger sister's hand with fierce determination. Do you two always protect each other? Always, Sarah answered without hesitation, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And if they separate you? We'll find each other again. We promised. For a moment, something passed through Vince's eyes. An old memory, perhaps, from when he and Alma were a family, before the adoption, before everything got complicated. Boss, one of the men interrupted. They're moving. They look like they're preparing for something. Vince returned to the window. Robert was talking intensely with what appeared to be the police operations commander. They're going to try to come in, he murmured. What do we do? We improvise. At that moment, the house phone rang. Everyone stared at the old device on the wall. Answer it, Vince ordered Arthur. Hello? Arthur, this is Robert. Is everything okay in there? Arthur looked at Vince, who nodded for him to continue. We're talking. Are the girls okay? They are. Arthur, I need you to know that we have a proposal for Vince. A proposal that could resolve this without anyone getting hurt. What proposal? If he surrenders voluntarily and releases all the hostages, we'll ensure he gets a fair trial and protection in prison. Vince laughed bitterly. Protection in prison? How generous. It's better than the alternative, Arthur said. What alternative? The one where they storm this place and you resist, with 2 children in the middle. The children are my protection. No, Vince, the children are your curse. What do you mean? Because using children as a shield makes you the kind of man you yourself would despise. Vince fell silent. Arthur continued. Eleanor once told me about you when you were younger. She said you always protected the smaller kids in school, that you fought anyone who bullied younger children. That was a long time ago. It was yesterday. That boy is still inside you. That boy is dead. No, he's not. He's just scared. Alma, who had managed to get closer to the house, shouted again, Vince, remember when you were 8 and you found that little girl lost in the mall? You picked her up and looked for her mother for 2 hours. Stop. Remember how you cried with joy when we found her mum? How you said you'd never let a child be alone and scared? Stop, Vince shouted, but his voice was broken. Lily approached him again. "Mister, you're crying." Vince wiped his face and realized he was. "I'm not." "Yes, you are. And it's okay to cry. I cry when I'm scared too." "I'm not scared." "Everyone is scared sometimes. Sarah is scared she can't take care of me. I'm scared of being alone. Uncle Arthur is scared he'll never see his wife again. She's dead. I know. But he's scared of forgetting her. And you're scared your mother will stop loving you." "My mother doesn't—" "Yes, she does. I can hear it in her voice. She loves you the same way Sarah loves me, even when we do wrong things." Vince looked out the window at Alma, who was standing beside the police officers, tears streaming down her face. "It's too late to go back." "It's never too late," Lily said with absolute conviction. "My mom always said that. It's never too late to do the right thing." One of Vince's men was getting impatient. "Boss, we need to make a decision. They won't wait forever." Vince looked around the room. Arthur, who had lost his wife because of him, Susan, tied up and terrified, two girls who had known more hardship in their short lives than many adults, and his mother outside, begging him to go back to being the son she remembered. "What's your decision, boss?" Vince closed his eyes, and when he opened them, there was something different in them. Vince opened his eyes and looked directly at his men. "Drop your weapons." "What do you mean, boss?" "Drop your weapons. It's over." "Vince, you can't be serious," one of them said, still holding his pistol. "I'm dead serious. Drop everything, now." The men hesitated, confused by their boss's sudden change of attitude. One of them tried to argue. "Boss, if we surrender now, you'll get life in prison. They have evidence of everything." "I know." "And you're willing to accept that?" Vince looked at Lily, who was watching him with her big, hopeful eyes. "I'm willing to stop being a coward who uses children as a shield. This is crazy. Crazy is what I've been doing for years." Vince walked to the door. "Arthur, tell Robert I'm coming out, alone, with my hands up." "Vince," Arthur began, "also tell him the children are fine, and everyone in here is safe." Arthur picked up the phone. "Robert, it's Arthur. Vince wants to surrender." "What do you mean?" "He's coming out alone with his hands up. He said everyone here is fine." On the other end of the line, Robert conferred quickly with the police commander before replying. "All right, tell him to come out." Slowly, very slowly, hands clearly visible. Vince stopped in front of Lily and knelt to her level. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me of who I used to be." "You're still that person. You were just lost, like the boy in the story." "Yeah, and you helped me find the stars." Lily smiled, and for the first time since this all began, it was a genuine smile. "Is everything going to be okay now?" "For you it will. For me, well, I'll have to face the consequences of what I've done. Your mom will still love you. I hope." "So," Vince stood up and looked at Sarah, "take good care of your sister. I always do. And you," he addressed Arthur, "take good care of both of them." "I will." "Vince," Susan spoke from the chair where she was still tied, "forgive me for taking the money. I'm the one who needs forgiveness, from everyone." One of his men quickly untied Susan, realizing the situation had truly changed. Vince walked toward the door, paused, and turned around one last time. "Arthur, there's one more thing you need to know about Eleanor." "What?" "She was pregnant." Arthur's world stopped. "What do you mean?" "She found out shortly before she got sick. She didn't tell you because she was afraid of what I might do if I knew you were having a child to protect. She was expecting a baby, 3 months along. That's why she fought so hard to survive the surgery. It wasn't just for her." Tears began to stream down Arthur's face. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know she died trying to protect your child, and because Vince paused, struggling with the words, "Because I'm responsible for taking that from you, too." "Vince, don't say anything. Just take care of these girls. Give them the family they deserve, the family my child will never have." "Your child?" Eleanor wasn't pregnant alone. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur was trying to process the impossible revelation. "The baby was yours?" "It was ours, mine and Eleanor's." Vince took a deep breath. "She was pregnant with twins." "My God. One was yours, the other was mine. We found out from a DNA test she did in secret." Vince wiped his eyes. "That's why she didn't want to report me at first. It wasn't just to protect you. It was to protect the children we were expecting." Arthur leaned against the wall, his legs failing. "How is that possible?" "It happens. Rarely, but it happens. 2 eggs fertilized by 2 different men in the same cycle." "Did Eleanor know?" "She knew. And she died with that secret to try and save you both, you and the children. And you let her die knowing she was carrying your child too." Vince closed his eyes. "I was so afraid of losing everything that I lost so much more." Lily, who had been listening to the conversation, without fully understanding, approached Arthur. "Uncle Arthur, are you okay?" "I don't know," he murmured. "I don't know anything anymore." "It's going to be okay," she said, holding his hand. "We'll take care of you." Vince watched the scene, a 4-year-old girl comforting a man he had destroyed, and felt the full weight of his actions. "Arthur," he said, "I know I don't deserve it, but there's one last thing." "What?" "Eleanor left some letters, hidden at her mother's house. They're in a safe that only you two knew the combination to." "What combination?" "Your wedding date followed by the house number. Where you lived when you were dating." Arthur stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Because she told me before she died. She wanted to make sure that if anything happened to her, you would find the letters." "What letters?" "Explanations. About everything. About the babies, about my crimes, about why she didn't tell you, and—" Vince hesitated. "And about how she wanted you to react if you found out the truth. She knew she might die. She suspected it. That's why she wrote the letters, as an insurance policy." Outside, Robert's voice echoed again through the megaphone. "Vince, time's up. Either you come out now or we're coming in." "I'm coming out," Vince yelled back. He went to the door, but before opening it, he looked one last time at the group in the room. "I hope one day you can forgive me, especially you, Arthur." "Vince," Arthur said quietly, "would Eleanor forgive you?" "I don't know. I hope so." "Then maybe, with time, I can too. That's already more than I deserve." Vince opened the door slowly, raising his hands high above his head. The afternoon sunlight momentarily blinded him, but he kept walking toward the police officers. "I'm unarmed," he shouted. "Everyone inside is okay." The officers approached cautiously, and Vince allowed himself to be handcuffed without resistance. When Alma ran toward him, he murmured, "Forgive me, Mom. I forgave you a long time ago, my son. Even after everything I did, especially after everything you did, because now you're going back to being who you always were inside." As he was led to the police car, Vince looked at the house one last time. In the window, he saw Lily waving at him. It wasn't a wave of goodbye, but a wave of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still time to find the way back home, even if that home was now a prison cell. Inside the farmhouse, Arthur was hugging the 2 girls, knowing their lives had changed forever. Not just because of the crimes they had helped expose, but because of the revelation about Eleanor and the children who were never born. But looking at Lily and Sarah, he realized that perhaps fate had other plans for them. Plans that involved a family created not by blood, but by love and the mutual need for healing. The journey was far from over, but it was finally heading in the right direction. 2 weeks had passed since Vince's arrest, and the routine in Arthur's house was gradually finding a new rhythm. The girls no longer talked about going back to the streets, and Arthur didn't mention the possibility of them leaving. It was as if they had all reached a silent agreement that they belonged in this place, in this unlikely family. On Tuesday morning, Arthur finally gathered the courage to go to Mrs. Albright's house. The old woman had partially recovered from her stroke, but her speech was still limited, and her memory fragmented. Even so, he needed to find the letters Eleanor had hidden. "Is Uncle Arthur coming back?" Lily asked as he prepared to leave. "I'll be back, little one. And I'll bring some important things." "Things about Aunt Eleanor?" "Yes, things she wanted me to know." Sarah watched the conversation attentively. In recent weeks she had noticed how Arthur sometimes became distant, lost in thought. She knew Vince's revelations had shaken him deeply. "Do you want us to go with you?" she offered. "No, it's better if you stay here with Alma. This is personal." Mrs. Albright's house was in the old centre of Ashton Falls, a simple two-story building that smelled of medicine and loneliness. When Arthur arrived, he was greeted by a nurse who was caring for the elderly woman. "She's having a good day today," the nurse explained. "She can form complete sentences and remembers recent things." "Can I talk to her?" "Of course. She was expecting your visit." Mrs. Albright was sitting in an armchair in the living room, a blanket over her legs despite the heat. When she saw Arthur, her eyes filled with tears. "Arthur, my boy, Mrs. Albright." He knelt beside the armchair. "How are you feeling?" "Bad, very bad. For the things I did. You don't need to feel bad. I know you were forced." "No, I wasn't just forced. I was scared. Very scared." "Scared of what?" "Of what he could do to you, to the family." Arthur held the frail woman's hand. "Mrs. Albright, Vince told me that Eleanor hid some letters here." Yes. In the safe. She made me promise." "Promise what?" "That I would only give them to you if something happened to her." "And what happened?" Mrs. Albright began to cry. I helped in the surgery. I switched the medicines for ones that caused an allergic reaction." "You caused the complications in the surgery." "Vince said, if I didn't, he would hurt you, and other people in the family." Arthur felt a wave of anger, but then he looked at the frail woman before him and realized she had also been a victim. "Mrs. Albright, can you show me where the letters are?" "I can, but you need to know. She didn't want you to know about the babies." "Why?" "Because she knew you would blame yourself. You would wonder if you could have done something different." "And could I have?" "No, she had already decided. Even before she got sick." "Decided what?" "That she would protect you, even if it cost her her life." Mrs. Albright guided Arthur to the master bedroom, where there was a small safe built into the wall, hidden behind a painting. With trembling hands, she entered the combination Vince had mentioned. Inside the safe were 3 sealed envelopes, each with a different date written in Eleanor's delicate handwriting. "She wrote 3 letters," Mrs. Albright explained. "One when she discovered Vince's crimes, another when she found out about the babies, and the last one the night before the surgery." Arthur took the envelopes with reverence, as if they were sacred relics. "May I read them here?" "You can. But be prepared." She knew she was going to die. Arthur opened the first letter, dated 3 months before Eleanor's passing. "My love, if you are reading this, it means you found out about Vince and his crimes. I want you to know I tried to tell you several times, but he always found ways to intimidate me. It wasn't fear for myself, it was fear for you. He has dangerous connections, and he promised that if I spoke, you would be destroyed too. Forgive me for keeping this a secret, But remember, none of this is your fault. You are a good man, and I love you more than anything in this world." The second letter was dated 2 weeks later. "Arthur, today I found out I'm pregnant. More than that, I'm expecting twins. The doctor explained it's a very rare situation, 2 babies from different fathers. One is yours, my love. The other is Vince's. I know this will shock and hurt you, but you need to understand it wasn't my choice. Vince forced himself on me one night when you were away on business. He threatened to hurt you if I told. But now we have the chance to have a family, even in these terrible circumstances. I so want us to raise these children together with all the love we have for each other." Arthur stopped reading, his vision blurred by tears. Mrs. Albright offered him a tissue. "Keep going," she said gently. "The last one is the most important." The third letter was dated the day before the surgery. "My dearest Arthur, if you are reading this letter, it's because I have passed and you have found the truth. I want you to know that my decision to have the surgery, even knowing the risks, was not out of desperation, but out of hope. Hope that if something went wrong with me, at least the babies could survive, but mostly hope that you would find a way to be happy again. I know it may sound strange, but I believe our path together was to prepare you for something greater. You have so much love to give, Arthur, and I know there are people out there who need that love as much as I did. Don't let my passing harden you. Let it open you to new possibilities of loving and being loved. About Vince, he is also a victim of his own bad choices. One day, perhaps you can forgive him, not for him, but for you. Forgiveness frees the forgiver, not the forgiven. Love again, Arthur. Build a family. Be happy. This is my last wish as your wife. Forever yours, Eleanor P.S. There is a fourth thing in the safe, something I chose especially for you." Arthur looked inside the safe and found a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not a wedding ring, but a simple ring with a green stone. "It was her mother's ring," Mrs. Albright explained. "She wanted you to give it to someone special when the time was right." "To whom?" "To whoever needed to know they were part of your family." Arthur understood immediately. He put the ring in his pocket and folded the letters carefully. "Thank you for keeping this for me. It was the least I could do, after everything I did wrong. Mrs. Albright, you were a victim too. Don't blame yourself." "How can I not blame myself? I killed my own daughter." "No, you were forced to participate in something terrible, but the responsibility lies with Vince, not you." When Arthur returned home, he found the girls playing in the yard with Alma. Lily ran to him immediately. "Did you find the important things?" "I found them." "Were they about Aunt Eleanor?" "They were. And about you two as well." "About us?" Sarah asked, approaching. "Eleanor wrote that I should build a new family, that I should love again." Arthur knelt between the two girls. "She was referring to you." "How could she know about us?" Lily asked, confused. "Because the people who love us know things about us that we don't even know ourselves." Arthur took the ring out of his pocket. "Eleanor left this for me to give to someone special, someone who needed to know they are part of our family." He offered the ring to Sarah. "This ring means that you two will always have a home here. You will always have a family, if you want it." Sarah looked at the ring, then at Lily, then at Arthur. "Are you asking us to be your daughters?" "I'm asking us to be a family. You, Lily, me, and Alma. A family that chose each other." Lily jumped into Arthur's lap. "I want to. I really want to." Sarah still hesitated. "And what if one day you change your mind?" "Real families don't change their minds. Real families stay together even when it's hard. Even when we do wrong things. Especially when we do wrong things." Sarah finally accepted the ring, tears streaming down her face. "Then yes, we want to be your family." That night, for the first time in months, Arthur slept peacefully. Eleanor was right. He had found a new way to love, a new family to protect and care for, and in his dreams he could have sworn he heard Eleanor's voice whispering, "Welcome to your new beginning." 6 months had passed since the girls officially became part of the Winston family. The adoption process was underway, with Robert handling all the legal aspects, while the household routine had settled naturally. Lily attended a nearby public school, where she quickly stood out for her intelligence and exceptional memory. Teachers were impressed with her ability to recall details from previous lessons and make complex connections for a child her age. Sarah had enrolled in a night school program to complete her high school diploma, determined to finish the studies she had interrupted when she had to care for her sister. During the day, she helped Alma with the house and had discovered a natural talent for cooking. Arthur had regained full control of the company, now free from Vince's illegal operations. Business was slowly recovering, and he discovered that being a father to 2 girls required negotiation skills he never knew he had. On that Thursday morning, an unexpected visit would once again change the course of their lives. Father Michael arrived shortly after breakfast, wearing a worried expression that made Arthur immediately realize something was wrong. "I need to talk to you," the priest said, looking significantly at the girls. "It's about Vince." Arthur asked the girls to play in the yard while he spoke with the priest in the living room. "What happened?" "He's sick, very sick." Father Michael sat down heavily. "Advanced cancer. The doctors say he has a few months at most." Arthur felt a complex mix of emotions. "And what does he want? For me to visit him?" "No, he wants to see the girls." "Absolutely not. Arthur, he's preparing to pass on. He wants to personally ask for their forgiveness. I'm not exposing Lily and Sarah to that. They're finally doing well. They're happy. I'm not going to risk traumatizing them again." "I understand your concern, but—" "There are no buts. The answer is no." At that moment, Lily ran into the room. "Uncle Arthur, can I get some water?" "Of course, dear." She stopped when she saw the serious expressions on the 2 men's faces. "Did something bad happen?" Arthur hesitated. "No, little one. Just grown-up talk." "Is it about Mr. Vince?" Father Michael and Arthur looked at each other, surprised. "Why do you think that?" the priest asked. "Because whenever you talk about him, you get that face. And because I heard what the priest said." Sarah appeared at the door, drawn by the conversation. "What's up with Vince?" Arthur sighed. He had promised to always be honest with the girls. "He's very sick, and he wants to talk to you too." "For what?" Sarah asked, immediately defensive. "To ask for forgiveness," Father Michael explained. Lily processed this information with the seriousness she had developed. "Is he going to die?" "Probably," Arthur answered carefully. "And he wants to talk to us before he dies." "Yes." "Why?" "Because sometimes people need to ask for forgiveness to be able to pass on in peace." Lily looked at Sarah, then at Arthur. "And what if we don't want to forgive him?" "You're not obligated to forgive. Forgiveness has to be genuine." "But if he dies without us forgiving him, will he be sad forever?" Father Michael knelt in front of Lily. "We don't know. But what matters is how you feel, not how he feels. I don't want to go," Sarah said firmly. "And that's your right," Arthur agreed. "But—" Lily hesitated. "If he's really sorry for what he did, wouldn't it be good for him to know we forgave him?" "Lily," Sarah knelt beside her sister, "you don't have to forgive just because he's sick. He did very bad things." "I know, but remember when we lived on the street and that drunk man threw food at me?" "I remember." "And then he came back and said he was sorry. And you said it was better to forgive because holding on to anger hurt us more than it hurt him." Sarah was quiet. She remembered the situation perfectly. It's different, Lily. That man was just drunk. Vince did bad things on purpose. But he was sick too, sick in the heart, like you said. And now he's sick in the body too. Arthur watched the conversation between the sisters with admiration. Even at 4, Lily demonstrated an emotional wisdom that was impressive. "What do you want to do, little one?" he asked. "I want to talk to him, but only if Sarah comes with me. And if I don't want to go, then I won't go either. We do everything together. Remember?" Sarah looked at her sister, then at Arthur, then at Father Michael. Finally, she sighed. "If we go, it's just once, and if I don't like anything, we leave immediately." "Of course," Arthur agreed. "And I'll be with you the whole time." 3 days later, they went to the prison hospital where Vince was being treated. The place was depressing. Grey corridors, the smell of disinfectant, and a general atmosphere of despair. Vince was in a simple bed, much thinner and paler than when they had last seen him. When he saw the girls enter, his eyes filled with tears. "You came." "Lily wanted to come," Sarah said, keeping her distance. "And you?" "I came because she came." Vince nodded, understanding. "Lily, can you come closer?" The girl looked at Arthur, who gave an encouraging nod. She approached the bed, but not too close. "Hi, Mr. Vince. Hi, little one. Thank you for coming. Are you in pain?" "I am, but it's not the worst pain I feel." "What's the worst?" "The pain of knowing I hurt people who didn't deserve to be hurt. Like us? Like you, like Arthur, like my mother, like many other people." Lily processed this for a moment. "Are you sorry?" "I'm very sorry, more than I can explain." "And if you could go back in time, would you do things differently?" "I would do everything differently. I would be a better person." "Why weren't you from the beginning?" Vince smiled sadly. "That's a very difficult question. I think because I chose the easy path instead of the right path. And now it's too late to choose differently. But I can at least try to do one right thing before I go." "What?" "Ask for forgiveness from the people I hurt. And hope that you all have a much better life than I did." Lily was silent for a few moments. Finally, she extended her small hand toward Vince. "I forgive you. Lily, you don't have to. I want to forgive, because holding on to anger is too heavy for a little girl." Vince took her hand gently, as if it were something precious and fragile. "Thank you. That means more to me than you can imagine." "Sarah," Lily turned to her sister, "do you want to forgive him too?" Sarah struggled with herself. She saw the peace on Lily's face and the desperate gratitude in Vince's eyes. "I don't know if I can," she said honestly. "That's okay," Vince said. "You don't owe me forgiveness. It's enough that you came here." "Maybe one day," Sarah said finally, "when it doesn't hurt anymore to think about what happened." "Maybe that's enough for me," Vince turned to Arthur. "Thank you for letting them come, and thank you for taking care of them as if they were your daughters. They are my daughters. They are, and they're lucky for it." As they were leaving, Vince called out one last time, "Lily." "Yes?" "Keep being that wise and kind girl. The world needs people like you." "I will. And you? Will you try to be good where you're going?" "I'll try. Then maybe we'll meet again one day, when the bad things have passed." That was the last time they saw Vince. He passed away 2 weeks later, at peace, knowing that at least one of the people he had hurt had been able to forgive him completely. And Lily, even at 4, had taught everyone a lesson about the transformative power of genuine forgiveness. A year and a half had passed since Lily saved Arthur from the waters of the Willow Creek River. On that sunny September morning, as they prepared for a special occasion, no one could have imagined they were about to discover the most surprising secret of all. Arthur's house was in a festive mood. Today, The adoption of Lily and Sarah would be officially finalized, and the whole family was radiant. Alma had prepared a special lunch. Father Michael was coming for a blessing, and Robert would bring the final documents that would officially make the girls Arthur's daughters. "I'm nervous," Sarah confessed, adjusting the new dress Arthur had bought for the occasion. "Why?" asked Lily, who at 5.5 had become a confident and talkative girl. "Because it's going to be official. We're going to have a real last name." "Winston is a nice name," Lily said, rehearsing. "Lily Winston, Sarah Winston." "It is," Arthur smiled from the doorway. "And you'll carry it with pride." "Dad," Lily said naturally, she had started calling him that a few months ago, "do you think Mom Eleanor would be happy?" "I'm sure of it. She would have loved you both." Robert arrived promptly at noon, carrying a folder with the final documents and a satisfied smile. "Done," he announced. "You are officially a family in the eyes of the law." "We were always a family," Sarah said. "Now it's just official." "Exactly." Robert distributed copies of the documents. "Lily Winston and Sarah Winston, welcome officially to the family." During the festive lunch, Robert mentioned casually, "Oh, I almost forgot. A letter arrived for you today." "For us?" Arthur asked. "For the girls, actually, from the law firm handling Vince's estate." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "What do they want?" Sarah asked, suspicious. "I don't know. The letter is sealed." Robert handed over the envelope. "But it's probably something related to his will." Arthur took the letter. "Do you want me to read it?" "You can read it," Lily said. "We're not scared." Arthur opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and a legal document. "It's from Vince," he said, "written before he passed." "Read it out loud," Sarah requested. Arthur began to read. "Dear Lily and Sarah, if you are reading this letter, it means I have passed on, and you are likely officially Arthur's daughters. I hope you will be very happy together. I want you to know that our meeting at the farm, and especially Lily's words, changed my life in my final months. For the first time in years, I was able to remember the boy I was before I got lost. I can't undo the harm I caused, but I can try to leave something good behind. Therefore, I am leaving you both an inheritance I discovered only recently, and which I think Eleanor would have wanted you to have." Arthur paused. "Inheritance? What inheritance?" Robert examined the legal document. "Apparently Vince left the girls a rural property, 50 acres of fertile land on the outskirts of Ashton Falls." "Land?" Sarah frowned. "Why would he leave land for us?" Arthur continued reading the letter. "The land I'm leaving you has a special history. It was the first property I bought with clean money before I got involved in dirty business. It was my dream to build a house for my family there, but there's something else you need to know. Something I discovered only in the last weeks of my life when I was reviewing old documents. Lily, you didn't save a stranger that day in the river. You saved your uncle." The silence at the table was total. Arthur stopped reading, his heart pounding. "What do you mean, Uncle?" Lily asked. Arthur continued, his voice trembling. "Your mother, Joanna Stevens, was my younger sister. Same father, but different mothers. She was raised by our aunt after our father left, and I never knew I had a sister. I discovered this while investigating the girl's origins for the will. Joanna Stevens, daughter of Raymond Winston, the same Raymond who was my father. Lily, you and I share the blood of the Winston family. You didn't just become my niece through adoption. You were always my niece, by birthright." The world stopped for everyone at the table. Lily looked at Arthur with her big eyes. "Are you really my uncle? For real?" "It seems so," Arthur murmured, still processing the revelation. Robert quickly checked some documents in his folder. Wait a minute, I can confirm this. I have Joanna's birth certificate here that we obtained for the adoption process. He examined the paper. Father, Raymond Winston. Mother, Maria Stevens. It's true. My God, Alma whispered. So they really are family. Sarah was silent, processing everything. You mean we always belonged here? That it wasn't just luck? It was never just luck, Arthur said, hugging both girls. It was destiny. Lily began to laugh, a pure, crystalline laugh. I saved my own uncle, and I didn't even know it. And your uncle saved you too, Sarah said, smiling through her tears. Arthur finished reading the letter. I hope this revelation brings joy, not confusion. Lily, you always had the wisdom of the Winston family. Sarah, you always had the strength. And now you officially have the place you always deserved. The land I'm leaving you has a spring of pure water that never runs dry, even in the driest summers. Eleanor always said that running water was a sign of renewed life. Perhaps you can build something beautiful there. With love and regret, Vince Winston P.S. There's one more surprise on the property. Look for the large mango tree in the center of the land. Robert smiled. Well, that changes a few things legally. Since Lily is Arthur's biological niece, the inheritance becomes a family matter. Can we go see the land? Lily asked, excited. Of course we can, Arthur replied. It's our land now. In the late afternoon, the whole family went to the rural property that now belonged to Lily and Sarah. It was beautiful land, with well-tended crops and a breathtaking view of the mountains around. They easily found the large mango tree mentioned in the letter. It was a centuries-old tree with a huge canopy that offered generous shade. Look for the surprise, Sarah said, examining the area around the tree. It was Lily who found it. Buried in the soil, protected by a metal box, was a final letter and a small tree sapling. It's a yellow ipe sapling, identified Father Michael, who had joined them, a very special flowering tree. The letter was brief. This sapling was planted by Eleanor months before she passed. She said she wanted to plant something that would bloom when the time was right. I think she knew that one day you would be here. Plant it wherever you like, and remember that the best things in life grow slowly but last forever. Lily held the small sapling carefully. Can we plant it here, near the mango tree? We can plant it wherever you want, Arthur said. As they planted the sapling together, Arthur, Lily, Sarah, and Alma, the sun set over Ashton Falls, painting the sky in gold and pink. Dad, Lily said, kneeling in the dirt, do you think Mom Eleanor planned all this? What? That I would save you in the river, that we would become a family, that we would find out we were already family. Arthur looked at the girl who had changed his life so completely. I don't know, little one, but I know she would be very happy with how everything turned out. It didn't turn out, Lily corrected, watering the planted sapling. It began. What do you mean? Our family began. Our new life began. The tree began to grow. She smiled at him with that wisdom that always surprised him. The best stories don't end, Dad. They turn into other stories. That night, when they returned home, Lily drew a picture of the family gathered around the planted sapling. In the drawing, there was a translucent figure watching from a distance, Eleanor, smiling and blessing the new family that had grown from her ashes. She's happy, Lily said, showing the drawing to Arthur. How do you know? Because when people do good things after we're gone, it's like we keep living through them. And so, 8 months after that desperate scream, in the river, a family had been formed. A child had found her true home, a man had learned to love again, and a woman who had passed on continued to watch over those she left behind through the invisible threads that connect all lives touched by love. Little Lily, who had once saved a man from the murky waters, had actually saved them all, including herself, from the even murkier waters of loneliness, despair, and hopelessness. And as she slept in her warm bed, hugging the teddy bear that Eleanor had chosen for her years before she ever met her, Lily dreamed of yellow ipay trees blooming, crystal clear water running forever, and a family that had chosen each other, growing like the best trees, slowly, but to last for all eternity. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.